We're talking about Erev Tisha B'Av, when we cry for the Churban. If we're Zoicha, perhaps in a few days we'll be celebrating a Yom Tov of Tisha B'Av, but in the meantime, we'll act as if we probably will have a similar Tisha B'Av to last year, and we'll have to sit on the floor and cry over our loss. In a sense, Hashem has brought this sorrow at a time when our hearts need to be opened up, and we need to grieve, we need to be feeling loss, we need to cry. So for that we have to be grateful that our hearts, which are normally hard and unfeeling, maybe felt a little bit of what they went through in the time of the Churban, loss of life, loss of home, loss of central point of life. Everything used to revolve around the base of Mikdash. Every regal they would go up and all meet. The whole nation would meet. What a great feeling that must have been. They lost that. They lost that feeling of being one nation, at least on the Chagim. And we have to mourn that. And perhaps that which is hard for us normally to feel a grief and a mourning over something which we never really experienced, Hashem gives us little siyuot, things that help us to open our heart and feel those things which are hard for us to feel. This is Parshas Devarim, the beginning of Sefer Devarim. It's also very interesting that Sefer Devarim is all a speech of Moshe Rabbeinu before he died, 36 days before he died, Rosh Chodesh Shvat. He started to darshan, and he was nifter on Zion Adar 37 days later. So for 36 days in a row, he got up and gave a drasha. Sometimes clarifying the halacha, that's why we call it Mishnah Torah, reviewing certain halachas which weren't clear before or need reviewing, and some new halachas came in this Sefer, Shema, and other mitzvahs which seem to not have appeared earlier, and mostly rebuke, mostly tochacha, mostly warning them to be careful and that they will stumble in the future, and how to try to act when they stumble, how to do tshuva, how to try to fight off the influences of the goyim. It's an amazing effort that Moshe Rabbeinu made in the last 36 days of his life to give Klal Yisrael that last push to greatness. So, in the spirit of that, the Parsha and the Sefer are called Devarim, and Chazal make a kind of a play on words, but there's a reason why this word is related. Amar Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ka Devorim, like bees, Hayu Bonai. So there's a midrash in Midrash Rabbah, you can look it up. Midrash Rabbah in Parshas Devarim, in Siman Vav, 6th section, at the beginning of the Parsha, Davar Acher, Eila HaDevarim, and then it goes into this comparison to the bees. It gives, I think, 4 comparisons. We'll try to read them now. That Klal Yisrael are considered like bees, in a sense. Our activities are like the bees' activities, and the dangers of being stung typify our life. And the honey that we produce is also part of what we're supposed to realize. So perhaps we'll read that first. and see if we can extend it a bit. First comparison is that Kadosh Baruch Hu says that his children are like bees. Kadosh Baruch Hu is like praising his nation that they're like the bees. Misnahagim ba'olam al yedei tzadikim va'al yedei nevi'im. That they conduct themselves by following their tzadikim and their nevi'im. Just like the bee follows the queen bee, and they don't do anything on their own. They get their instructions from the queen bee, whole complicated procedure, how they learn from her what to do. So too, and this Chazal we're aware of, it's not just modern science, that we also get our direction from, like the queen bee, so to speak, our tzaddikim, our gedolim, all the way down to the Rebbe, right? Our personal guide. Therefore, this is a tremendous schus. This is how we should act, and this is why we should feel proud to be a nation that follows its leaders. The leaders of the Gedolim, the leaders who are, as it says, Tzadikim and Nevi'im. Those who really know the instructions of what to do. Not others who may seem like leaders, but they don't necessarily really know what they're doing. They're guessing, they're trying, they're this and that, but the Tzadikim and the Nevi'im have a direct connection to Kadosh Baruch Hu through their wisdom, or as it says, their Nevuah, and even without Nevuah, that we live in a time when there's no Nevuah, we believe that our Tzadikim have Ruach HaKodesh. There are countless stories where it was verified that the Gedolim, I heard certain stories about the Steipler, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, and the Bala Ben Chaim Chaim, his son Reb Chaim, which is clear they had Ruach HaKodesh. They knew things that were not possible to know any other way. There are stories that I have personally heard of. I don't want to discuss them now, but anyone who wants, I could try to tell you later. I'm sure everybody has a few stories that they've heard of, but Tzadikim had Ruach HaKodesh, which helps us to follow their advice on personal matters, to know that they had Siyata D'Shmaya, and also as a nation. That, for example, I heard that there's certain yeshivas which are not having any Bein Hazmanim this year. They're not taking a break because they realize that how essential our learning and our davening is, and that when there's a yeshiva, we tend to exert ourselves a lot more to come to shir, to learn properly. And certain I heard the Bells of Hasidim are not having a Bein Hazmanim. They're not having a recess now. But in the meantime, we are, but each person should at least realize that it's not a real patient, so to speak, that we should be trying, as the Gedolim are aware of. The question is whether we can institute it as a rule for all the yeshivas not to take a break. That might be difficult. People have to be home, people have to help their families during the next 3 weeks. We will probably have a break. But at least people should try to do as much learning and as much davening for the well-being of the nation during this time as well. And perhaps even more so. When you come to shir, it's easier to exert yourself. When you're at home, you have to work a bit harder to find the time to really go over what we learned here. Perhaps it's easier to just go over what we learned, which isn't always easy to review. Sometimes the Yetzer Hara says you already know it. Why should you learn it again? I already know it. But we all know the truth that when we do sit down and we do review, we always learn new things, and the things that we thought we knew aren't really so clear, and we get them clearer. And besides all of that, it remains much more indelibly imprinted on our memory after we've reviewed it. In fact, the Gemara says that one should review 40 times to properly remember. In any event, that's something that a person can work on very well during Bein Hazmanim. When he's even alone, he can go over the different subjects he learned here for the past few months. And even if he has reviewed them already, to review them again. As we said, there is no real limit to the number of times one should review his learning. The next comparison, Davar Acher, another pshat, Eile Hadvarim, Ma Devora Hazo, Duvsha Matok V'uk Tzamar. It has honey that's sweet, but on the other hand, it has a sting which is bitter. Karchein Divrei Torah, so too the words of Torah. Kol mi she'over aleim, anyone who transgresses them, notel apofasim, which is some kind of a gezerah. He gets a decree against him. Shene'amar mos yumas hanoeh v'hanoafis. It says that a person who commits adultery will surely die. And it says also by Shabbos, mechalaleha mos yumas, anyone who profanes Shabbos will surely die. But on the other hand, the kol misha makayim osa, whoever keeps it properly, zoicha l'chaim, he's zoicha to life, which means, of course, life in this world can be extended and improved, but also, of course, in the next world. Shenamar laman yarichun yamecha. It's in order to lengthen our days. Person wants to live. Person wants to have a good life. That is principally by keeping the Torah properly, and Hashem will make sure from above that things work out. And the Meforshim here note that you could have picked any Avera. There's many Averas that have an Onish. Why did it pick these two Averas of adultery or being Mechal Shabbos? He said, because in these two mitzvahs we see much more clearly the dichotomy, the contrast between doing the good and doing the bad, because you have the same exact thing. A person can have relations, but if he does the relations in the right way, he has a mitzvah with his wife, a mitzvah, etc., of pru revu. But the same act could be an avera. So the same thing, so to speak, that produces the honey could produce the sting. It depends how you do it. If you do it properly, produce honey. If not, there's the sting. Then the same thing with Shabbos. Shabbos, if you keep Shabbos properly, is a tremendous source of bracha. But if the same thing is kept improperly, then it could produce the sting of onish. Okay, so that's a third comparison, I think. Or is that the second? Second comparison. Davar Acher, another pshat. Eila hadavari. Ma hadavoira hazo duvsha labala v'uktzal acherim. Just as the bee, its honey is for its master, right? People keep bees in like a bee farm or whatever, and they collect the honey at the end of the period of time. They have huge amounts of honey to sell, to use, to enjoy. The honey is for the owner. The bee doesn't get any real usage out of this honey. It's all for the master. And it has a sting. Also, the bee is not affected by its own sting. It's for others, so to speak. Other people, other than the master. The master knows how to handle the bees. The master knows how to use certain implements like smoke and fire and different things to shoo the bees away when it's taking the honey. They don't get stung when they're taking the honey, but other people that would come and try, they'd probably get stung, as well as if they run into the bee when it's out collecting the pollen, they can get stung. So for the master, there's no sting, just the honey, but for others, there's the sting. What's the comparison? Kachein divrei Torah. So too the words of Torah. Sam chaim liYisrael. It's a potion of life for the Jewish nation. But Sam Hamavis La'ovdei Chachavim. It's a potion of poison for the goyim. That means that we get tremendous benefit from the Torah, but the goyim who look at the Torah as like, as we see, people look at us as their enemy, they only get destroyed, right? Even though we don't enjoy seeing all the pictures of the devastation, but people who look at us as enemies, they get stung. And over the years, any nation who tried to destroy the Jewish nation may have done some damage. They were people who they killed, etc. Way back in Egypt, children died in the Nile, and of course in the Holocaust we know, and every generation has its own set of enemies that do have some temporary success in causing damage to the Jewish nation. But overall, any nation whichever tried to extinguish the Jewish nation was self-extinguished, right? There's no more Egypt of days of old, there's no more Rome of days of old, there's no more Spain of days of old. All those nations rose and fell, as Mark Twain pointed out even to the Goyim. And the only one that has remained is the Jewish nation. We remain in our glory from, of course, we don't have the same glory as we did when there was a Beis Hamikdash, but we survived with our glory, with our Torah, with our customs, and the same striving for perfection as we always have had. So the Torah has become a Sama Chaim, it's a potion of life, it's kept us alive for all the generations, but a Sama Mabas Lo Tekachavim. It's poison the Goyim who try to defeat us. Amr Bidu Bar Simon B'Shem Rabbi Levi, another, I guess this is the fourth one, Ma HaDavora Hazos, Kol Ma Shehi Misagelis Labalo. And, just 1 second. This sounds like a similar one. Anything it gathers for its master. Sounds like a similar one. Let's see what the difference. Kach ma Yisrael misaglim mitzvos v'masim tovim he misaglim laviyim shem shemayim. So this is maybe stressing a little bit more what we said before, that in a sense, when we collect what we're collecting, even though we do know we're going to get Olam Haba, Bezrat Hashem will have a beautiful Olam Haba, and even when Mashiach comes, we'll enjoy the fruits of our labor, so to speak. But really, when we do a mitzvah, we're not supposed to think about that. We're supposed to think when we do mitzvahs that we're doing it for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That my whole reason for doing a mitzvah is to try to make Hashem happy, try to give Hashem nachas ruach, like a child trying to please their parent, like a lover trying to please their beloved. So we have the same relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When we do our mitzvahs, and we're striving to do this and striving to do that, striving to get a perfect esrog and a perfect mitzvah, we're trying to do it for Hashem. We know we will benefit. That's a known, something we're happy about. We don't have to ignore that. But our main intention should be to do it for Kadosh Baruch Hu. So this is something we should be proud of, that we have these attributes. But I was thinking along the lines of the Sefer Devarim and so forth, that the idea of rebuke is being compared to the bees. Let's do a little bit of thinking, perhaps beyond the Midrash. We have a bit of time. One of the things the bees do is they work together. Bees work together. They're a team. There's the queen bee, as we said, and the others take their leave from her, but they work together. I remember reading once about how a bee comes back to the hive, and the way it tells everybody else where they found, a patch of flowers or whatever they look for, it does a certain kind of a dance in front of all the others, and it's amazing the chachma that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put in the bee, that it's able to dance in a certain way, that they did experiments that I had read about many years ago. And it says that the way it dances, it's able to convey to the others not only the distance, how far away this thing is, but also how long it's going to take to get there, and factoring in the wind as well. So this is another thing we have to try to strive towards, is to work together, to help each other, to reach our goals, not to be in it for ourselves. Even now that we're up here almost in a vacation wonderland compared to down in the south where they're suffering. Someone said that they came up here and they saw people driving in the streets. So like, I can't believe people are driving in the streets. And down south, we don't even drive in the streets, and the stores aren't even open. We have to be noise ba'ol. We have to try to feel as one nation. We have to try to work together to feel their pain. That's first of all. And to, as we said, to daven for them, to grieve with them, and not to feel as if it's just us over here and them over there. That's the way the Goyim think. There are many separate nations. We're one nation that, even if we're separated by distance or by them being in one situation, us being in another, but we should feel like we're together on this in this situation. Besides the fact that we know that all of our mitzvahs and all of our Torah help win the war. They help them have hatzlacha. We know how many stories we've heard of bombs going off in a certain place and no one was hurt, or the bomb didn't go off, or the bomb missed its mark. As someone said, they heard that every time a bomb went off in an open field, in an open area, they said, we didn't know there were so many open areas in Israel. That's a miracle, right? And that sometimes happens because of our mitzvahs. Because I davened one Shemona Esrei with a little bit of kavanah, maybe it helped that bomb go a little bit off its mark. The idea of kavanah, by the way, is from the word kivun. Kivun means a direction. So it's not just concentrating on the words, it's having a direction, to be directed to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And maybe if we are completely directed to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem will help that the bomb will not exactly be directed to its mark completely. I heard an amazing story today, or actually yesterday, that someone told me they heard of a guy, or I think they know this guy, who is involved in the Kippot Barzel, the Iron Dome project to deflect the bombs or to intercept the bombs when they come. And as we know, that they've been very successful, thank God, Baruch Hashem. And sometimes they're not successful, they're not able to succeed. And he said there was one such bomb that they had tried numerous times to knock it down, and it was heading for Tel Aviv. And the person who was in charge of this part of the project saw that they had failed, basically. He felt there was nothing left to do except contact the neighborhood where it was about to hit and warn them to be ready for, that they were about to be hit, to be ready with enough ambulances and medical personnel. And he was just about to make that call when suddenly he realized it had gone off its mark. And he was sure with all of the details of, they're able to predict exactly, that's why the siren doesn't always go off, even in one area when it's about to hit nearby, because they know so well where it's going to hit that they don't bother sometimes sounding the alarm in a nearby area. This one he had calculated very, very well that it was about to hit a certain building or a certain neighborhood. And all of a sudden it got deflected and it went out to the ocean. And he looked into it and he realized that at that very moment when it was about to hit, a huge wind had come and had blown it into the ocean. And the story that I heard yesterday was that this person told me the story, either directly or indirectly heard, that this person who was in charge, who had seen this whole thing unfold, said, I saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I just saw, he felt like at that moment he was watching HaKadosh Baruch Hu in action. And he was so heavily affected, he was so deeply affected that he got on the phone and he called his old Rosh Yeshiva. He had gone to Yeshiva many years before, and I don't know whether he was still religious, not religious, was learning, wasn't learning. So it sounded like he needed a recommitment to his learning at least. And he got on the phone and he told his Rosh Yeshiva the story, and he said, after the war, as soon as it's over, I'm coming back to Yeshiva to learn. So we know Hashem is involved, and we know if we have more kavanah that we're aimed exactly at HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our tefillos, so that may help to deflect the direction of things which we don't want to hit in the right spot. But in general, we have to feel like we're a nation, we're working together. Things that happen elsewhere affect me, things that happen elsewhere are sometimes because of me. I can't feel detached from something. If something happens, it could be because I wasn't careful enough with my mitzvahs. We know that working together also brings a tremendous Yeshua to Klal Yisrael. Kadosh Baruch Hu loves it when we work together, when we feel an achdus. The Gemara says that in the days of, I think it was Achav, it's too bad Red Levitt isn't here, he's our Tanakh expert, but maybe someone else knows, that they went out to war and they won repeatedly, even though they did Avodah Zorah. And yet David HaMelech, who they were much more careful about Avodah Zorah. In his day, they went out to war and many times they fell. Oh, because the Gemara says that in the days of Achav, they did not speak Lashon Hara against each other. As bad as they were on the Avera of Avodah Zorah, but they were very careful not to speak Lashon Hara about each other. There was an achdus, there was a feeling of, how can I speak against this person? It's like if I ask you to tell me a dirty piece of Lashon Hara on your mother. Most people would say, I'm not going to talk about my mother. What, about my mother? Get out of here, right? You might even give them a smack. Get out of here. I'm not going to talk about my mother. Well, every Jew should feel to you like your mother. Every Jew should feel to you as close to you as a close relative. It's like my brother. It's like my mother. It's like my father. If there was that kind of achdus, like in the days of Achav, not only would we succeed in not speaking Lashon Hara about each other, but also we would deflect all of these horrible incidents where people die or get injured in war, and even not in war. We've heard of cases even within Yerushalayim where the Arabs get upset and they start stoning people, and they start throwing things, and in other places, in Paris, they were trapped a whole group of people in a shul on Shabbos. They were outside like in Kristallnacht, ready to burn the place down and kill these people, and they were trapped inside, terrified for their lives. All these incidents, it could be if we were unified as one nation, even if this Jew dresses differently than me, and this Jew acts differently than me, and I don't like the way he looks, or I don't like the way he talks, or I don't like the way he smells. If I feel it's my brother, if I feel it's like my mother, then that kind of achdus can fight off all the different sorrows. Whereas in the days of David, unfortunately, there wasn't the same achdus. That's what the bees show us. The bees show us that this is another aspect of, we could be like one set of bees, following the leader, as we said in the Midrash, but also working together, not feeling like each person is in it for himself. Another aspect, just 1 second. Oh, in this respect, also, that if we really feel like one nation together, and I'm completely at one with you, when I give you criticism, which is part of what we have to learn about how to talk to each other properly. And this time we know that it's time for working on Beinam L'Chavero. When I talk to you, if I'm completely at one with you, that I feel like you're my brother, then it's not that I'm rebuking you because I think you're a shegitz and I think you're a horrible person and you have to do better. It's that we're like Siamese twins, right? We belong together. And it's like my right hand is doing something it shouldn't. So, I used to play the piano. I would spend hours and hours in the practice room, practicing scales, practicing pieces, till your fingers work together. Both hands have to work together. But they don't play the same notes. This one's playing its own little thing with its own rhythm up here, and this guy's doing a whole different thing down there. And somehow together they make beautiful music. Not necessarily in my case, but it has the potential, right? So the same thing over here. If I give you a rebuke, it's not because I think you're doing something wrong per se, because I happen to have the experience that maybe can help you. I'm trying to help you, that we should work together as a nation. I'm not attacking you. I'm not trying to make you feel low. I'm not trying to make you realize I'm better than you. It's just a matter of I happen to have that experience. Like you talk to a wise man and he tells you, if you leave the eggs on for 4 minutes, it's going to get burnt. In 3 minutes, you turn it over, right? You feel very good. They told you a nice piece of advice that you can use to make better eggs, right? So that's when you're telling someone how to put on tefillin or how to act or how to anything, which we should feel connected to the other person and we should want to help them. But it's the way we do it. We do it in such a way that I happen to have the experience. Why don't we work together on this? Why don't we produce good music together? Another thing we said, that the bee dances in order to give over its information. In a sense, that's a beautiful idea if we think about it, that means that when I interact with someone else, it's not just when they say something to me that I should realize they need help, let's say. Maybe I could just see it the way they're acting. If, let's say, their face is a certain expression of sadness, or I see that they didn't show up for something like a wedding or something, maybe there's something going on. It's the way they dance. I can take a message from the way this person's acting, the way he's moving, the way his face looks. Sometimes those are more important messages than the verbal message. You ask someone how he's doing, he says, okay. So he said he's okay, so I can go on. I don't have to stop and worry about this guy anymore, right? No, do you see the way he said that? See the dance? He was dancing when he said that. What was his dance? Right? Oh my gosh, right? That was part of his message. Bees know how to interpret that, to figure out how to fix the situation. We should also be in tune with that. We have to be in tune with our fellow Jews. That's part of the actus. That's also part of just reading a nonverbal message, as well as the other way around. If I want to tell someone something, I don't always have to say something. Sometimes just a small expression on the face, just a smile, right? You don't have to even, sometimes you don't even say good morning. You just put a nice smile, a person feels it could change the whole day. You dance for him to tell him a certain message. Or the way you run over when he comes in the door. If you run over, say hello, he feels like, gosh, this person likes me. If you go, hi, right? Then you gave a different dance. You gave a different message with your body, with your face, with your expression. That's something we have to be aware of. That's something that we produce as we go through life. The honey that gets produced as well shows us that even though we said before that the sting is sort of like in contrast to the honey, but really it's a package deal. There's honey and there's sting. They have to realize also that if we're giving someone a sting, right, we tell them a criticism, we tell them something that they need to hear, because we have to make sure that everybody is working together to produce beautiful honey. But I also have to make sure he realizes that I'm not trying to sting him. There's no purpose in the sting by itself. It's just that we're together to produce honey. So maybe I have to sting a bit to keep producing the honey, to make sure we work together, to learn nicely together, to daven nicely together. Someone's talking in the middle of davening. It's not the most beautiful honey, so I might have to go up and talk to him in a way, but make sure it produces honey. Make sure your sting produces honey. That's what I'm trying to say. You're trying to produce honey, so show him that that's your intention, and make sure that the way you talk to him produces honey. There's a bit of sting, there's always going to be a bit of sting, but it has to come out honey. I heard recently, we'll stop with this, that I happened to read 3 stories. I don't even know if they all happened recently, but they were brought sort of in connection with each other. There was a story which did happen recently, that in Texas there was a guy who used to mow the lawn for the, maybe still doing it, I don't know, for the city, right? He was a municipal worker for the city, and he was mowing the lawn, and he happened to run over a beehive. And all these bees come out, they got very upset. And when bees get upset, they do more than just get upset, they sting. And he got, I think, there were other workers nearby who got stung. Oh, but this guy, the head mower of the lawn or whatever, he got 1,000 stings. But Baruch Hashem, he ended up in the hospital, but he was okay. Later on, he was okay, right? And there was another story brought about a woman who ran into, I think, a hornet's nest near Montreal, and she was actually, I think, a doctor, and she got bit, or whatever, less times than even this guy, but she went into anaphylactic shock, right? And she died. And there was another story, which is even worse, somewhere I think in Japan or China, somewhere in Asia, where they have this really bad hornet that has just been killing a lot of people in the area. I saw a picture of this hornet. It's like about that long. It has like some thing coming out of its head, like looks like a unicorn. And it's very, very dangerous, and has killed many people in that area. Many people. They were warning people how to be careful, not to go with short sleeves, and not to go in certain places. So what do we learn from all this? Right? Obviously stay away from Asia. But besides that, we have to realize that, as we said, sometimes we have to say things to people that we feel we have to correct them, we have to talk with them, we have to say things that aren't always pleasant. It's a bit of a sting. But when I do it, I have to know who I'm talking to. I could be talking to a person who's allergic to bees. My mother used to be allergic to bees. I don't know if she still is, but I remember all my life that my mother's allergic to bees, right? These people who got bitten, who died, there was something that it wasn't like the guy in Texas. The guy in Texas, he could take 1,000 stings and he still came out of it, right? A Texan, right? But this person in Montreal unfortunately died, and many people in Asia died. That means that each person is affected differently. When I say something to one person, it can affect them okay. They can brush it off, they can go farther and continue to function. They'll be like the guy in Texas. But I might be talking to another person that he's a little bit more feeble, less confident in himself, or maybe just had a horrible day, and I come up to him and tell him, by the way, your kippah's on wrong. Oh, gosh, right? And he wants to die because I'm the 100th person who said something to him that day about something he wasn't doing right. It's like being bitten by 100, right? So I could be, first of all, talking to someone who's much more susceptible, and I have to be careful that he could be very injured by my statement in a very harsh way. And some people are not. Some people are different. They can take it. And some people, it's fatal. can ruin them for life. There are many people who went off the derech. They'll ask them, why don't you keep the Torah? Because my Rabbi said this about me. Because this person embarrassed me in public. I read a story recently, an old friend of mine who's now a Rav in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And he just had an article which appeared in the Mishpacha magazine, where he says he got invited to a hospital because the guy was on his deathbed and they wanted him to perform the last rites. He got to the hospital and this guy was Jewish, but he's surrounded by all these blacks. So they were saying, thank you for coming to help our father. So you didn't understand what happened. What happened was it was from the guy's second marriage. So he later talked to a relative of this person who said, you should know, my brother used to be a very good Jew. And when his first wife got sick, he ran to the rabbi and he asked the rabbi to daven for him. And the rabbi said, fine, but you have to give a certain donation to the shul. And the guy got very upset and he went out and he would never go into a shul again, right? Obviously, this person reacted horribly and it like killed him, right? He still kept certain Jewish things, but basically this was like a sting which killed the person, right? And we have to realize in this part of the article is to warn people that we have to be careful what we say to others. Sometimes it can put him off from Yiddishkeit for his whole life. And there are other stories. As I said, many of the children today will tell you what happened. A Rebbe did this, a Rebbe did that, someone did this, someone did this. And we ourselves have that problem. We never know till Me'av Esrim how we affected people around us. So, again, let's try to act together in this beautiful mashal of the bees that produce honey and work for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and follow our Torah leaders. And if we do have to sing, make sure we are careful who we're talking to and how we do it, and make sure we're not the 100th sting of the day, etc. And we should work together, Be'ezrat Hashem, to be a unified nation, to hopefully bring the Gula Shlema, bin Rabbi Yomena, and Mashiach Tzidkenu bin Rabbi Yomena. Shkoyach, shkoyach.
I wish das kannst du continue with.
Does that show up for opening fasting?
Of course, it's something that they're doing with fasting. Generally, when somebody comes and put on something else, they do some things better. So I wanted to look and see what else they do.